This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic. State all real numbers x in 0 to 2 pi if the cosine of x equals negative 0.2597 and round answers to the nearest hundredth. All right, we're going to have to use a calculator for this, and notice we're looking for all real numbers, so make sure you set your calculator to radian mode. Okay. So if the cosine of x equals negative 2.597, now we're looking for a value of x in 0 to 2 pi. We can estimate where that's going to be, at least which quadrant it's going to be in. For the cosine to be negative, remember that it would have to be in quadrant 3 and 4. Okay, so there must be, x could either be here, right, somewhere here, or it might be here. And remember, we're looking for values in between 0 and 2 pi. So the first one we can get by using the cos inverse. So one possibility is putting in your calculator the cos inverse of negative 0.2597, and that will give us this first one, because the cos inverse will give us something between 0 and 2 pi. So you want to put that in your calculator, make sure it's in radian mode, and that gives us 1.83. So this amount right here, that arc, is 1.83. So the question is how to get this other one. So you have to think, how would I get that other one? So first of all, we've got one answer. It's 1.83. All right, so did you figure it out? How would I figure out what, in other words, this other positive angle is right here? Okay, well, the way I think of it is you got to take this much off. It doesn't go all the way around, right? This much off. And how much is that? That's the same as what we see up there, 1.83. So all the way around would be 2 pi, but you got to take off 1.83. So I like to write it this way. The first value is this 1.83, which you get by doing the inverse cosine. The second value, you do 2 pi minus that by looking at the picture. So in your calculator, you could just do 2 pi minus 1.83, or you could actually just do 2 pi minus and put that all in again. And you should get 4.45 if you round it to the nearest hundredth. So those are the two solutions in 0 to 2 pi. Next problem. State all angles theta in 0 to 360 degrees if the sine, oops, didn't want to write x, that would be theta. Okay. If sine of theta equals negative 3/7, round angles to the nearest tenth of a degree. So first of all, notice we're looking for degrees this time. So you're going to have to first set your calculator to degree mode. And again, we're only going to look for positive values in between 0 and 360 degrees. So we can use our calculator and say, and I'm going to be careful here, I could take the sine inverse of negative 3/7, but if you think about what we're going to get a negative number, a negative angle, because that's what happens. If the sign is negative, the calculator, when you put it, by definition, the inverse sine gives us something between negative 90 and 90 degrees. So it's going to give us a negative one. So let's just think about where these angles might be first. Sine negative 3/7. So in other words, that's sort of like thinking of the y over the x, 3 over 7, but it's going down here. So it looks, maybe it's something like that. Okay. But we want to get the positive value for that angle. When you plug this in your calculator, you're going to get a negative angle right here. All right, so go ahead and put that in your calculator, the arc sine or inverse sine of negative 3/7, and then round to the nearest tenth of a degree. And I get negative 25.4 degrees. So this is negative 25.4 degrees, which is not a number, it's not an angle between 0 and 360. But if I add 360, then I will have it, right? I'll have this black one. If I add 360 from the negative 25.4, so let's do that. Our first value we can get is by taking that negative 25.4 degrees and adding 360 so that we get a positive coterminal angle. And that gives 334.6 degrees. All right, well, that's only one of the angles. How am I going to get the other one? So let's move this down just a little bit. Okay, here we go. I'm going to take this off. All right, so where would that other angle be? Where else is the sign negative? It's below the x-axis, and that would be over here. So I sort of figured this out. How would I figure out what that angle is? The trick is knowing that this is just 25.4 degrees, right? If this is the angle negative going down, that's still just, you know, absolute, in terms of absolute value, 25.4. From here to here is 180. So I need to take that for my other one. I'm going to have 180 plus that extra 25.4 degrees. And so what's that? 205.4 degrees? So when we're all done, our solutions are, they're both in quadrant 3 and 4, right? Does that make sense? Where you're going to have a sign be negative. So we've got 205.4 degrees and 334.6 degrees. This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic.